Good morning, dear students. And now we are going to discuss the block second of British drama. And after discussing Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, it is you see, the second block is devoted to William Shakespeare, one of the prominent poets and dramatists of English literature and the world literature. William Shakespeare, who was born on 26th April 1564 and died on 23rd April 1616, was an English poet, playwright, and actor. He is widely regarded as the greatest writer in English language and the world's preeminent dramatist. He is often called England's national poet and the Bard of Avon. So as we were talking, my dear friends, that he is a greatest writer the world has ever produced and one of the important and preeminent dramatists of English literature. He is known particularly for his writings. He is often called the England's national poet. And because he was born at Stratford-on-Avon, that is why he is known as Bard of Avon also. His extant works, including some collaborations, consist of about 38 plays, 154 sonnets, 2 long narrative poems, and a few other verses, the authorship of some of which is uncertain. His plays have been translated into every major living language and are performed more often than those of any other playwright. So as we were talking about his plays, and we will be talking about his plays in our coming slides. So you see, he is one of those important writers of the world. He is one of those privileged writers of the world whose works have been translated, whose works, the forms and the dramas have been translated into every major language of the world. And this is why he is popular today, even after centuries and centuries together. He is very famous even today, everywhere he is studied. Shakespeare was born and brought up in Stratford-upon-Avon. At the age of 18, he married Anne Hathaway. The place Stratford-upon-Avon is very famous because of William Shakespeare, and it was the place where he was born. And when he was 18 years old, he got married with Anne Hathaway, with whom he had 3 children, Susanna and twins Hamlet and Judith. So actually, as a matter of fact, wife of Shakespeare, Anne Hathaway, was a bit older than Shakespeare was. And between 1585 and 1592, he began a successful career in London as an actor, writer, and part owner of a playing company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men, later known as King's Men. So actually, in order to be a successful person, he went to London, and there he started working as an actor and writer and started doing some of other things also. He appears to have retired to Stratford around 1613 at age 49, where he died 3 years later. So it seems actually he got retirement and he went to Stratford in 1613 when he was 49 years old, and after 3 years of his retirement, he died. Shakespeare produced most of his known work between 1589 and 1613. This is a very important point to be noted, that Shakespeare produced most of his eminent and particular works between the years of 1589 and 1613. This was the time when the most productive works, when the most important works, when the most important dramas by Shakespeare were composed, were written. His early plays were mainly comedies and histories, and these works remain regarded as some of the best work produced in these genres even today. He then wrote mainly tragedies until about 1608, including Hamlet, King Lear, Othello, and Macbeth, considered some of the finest works in the English language. So you see, at the time, until 1608, he wrote Hamlet, King Lear, Othello, and Macbeth, that are considered one of the best, one of the finest works the English language has ever produced. In his last phase, he wrote tragicomedies also known as romances, and collaborated with other playwrights. So when you see in his last phase of his life, at the last phase of his life, he started writing some of the tragicomedies. But at the initial stages of his life, you see he wrote only the historical romances, and then you see tragedies, either tragedies, or fully comedies. So this is how he did in the beginning. But later on, you see in the later part of his life and the later phase of his writing career, he started writing some of the tragicomedies also, where it was a mixture. Tragicomedy is a mixture of tragedy and comedy. In tragicomedy, the first part, at certain level, it is a tragedy, and after that, it is a fullest comedy. So this is how it is a fine mixture of tragedy and comedy. And Shakespeare tried in the field of tragedy and comedies also, that are known as tragicomedies. Many of his plays were published in the edition of varying quality and accuracy during his lifetime. In 1623, John Hamnings and Henry Condell, two friends and fellow actors of Shakespeare, published the First Folio. First Folio is a very important question and usually asked. When was the First Folio published? It was published in 1623. A collected edition of his dramatic works that included all but two of the plays now recognized as Shakespeare's. So you see, Shakespeare never took that much interest, and he was not very much interested in getting published his works. So therefore, you see his friends and fellow actors, the friends and fellow actors of Shakespeare, John and Henry, two of them actually tried to publish the collection of Shakespeare's dramas. And that is why they did it. They collected some of the important works, some of the important dramas. And in 1623, my dear friends, in 1623, the first folio of Shakespeare came out, and it got officially published in 1623. It was prefaced with a poem by Ben Jonson. Once again, a very important thing to know, it was prefaced. The first folio was prefaced with a poem by Ben Jonson, in which Shakespeare is hailed persistently as not of an age but for all time, where Ben Jonson very clearly said that Shakespeare does not belong to a particular age. Shakespeare does not belong to a particular time. Shakespeare does not belong to a particular period, but he has an influence, but he is related to each and every period. He is related to all other periods of English literature also. Shakespeare was a respected poet and playwright in his own day, but his reputation did not rise to its present heights until the 19th century. There is no doubt that Shakespeare was one of the most blessed writers of English literature, because usually it does not happen. He had the blessings of the goddess of knowledge and the goddess of wealth, both. Because at his time he became very famous, he became very rich also at his time. But the reputation of today, the reputation what Shakespeare enjoys today, was not there when he was alive. It was not there when he was alive. This kind of reputation started coming, you see, for Shakespeare only in the 19th century. The Romantics, in particular, acclaimed Shakespeare's genius, and the Victorians worshipped Shakespeare with a reverence. It were Romantic poets who acclaimed, who appreciated Shakespeare's genius, and they proved him that he was a real genius, and the Victorian poets started worshipping Shakespeare with respect and honor and reverence. In the 20th century, his work was repeatedly adopted and rediscovered by his new movements in scholarship and performance. And in 20th century, people started taking new themes from his dramas. People started taking the new images from his dramas. People started taking the new subjects from his dramas. People started taking new dialogues from his dramas. And this is how, my dear friends, he started becoming popular and more popular. His plays remain highly popular today and are constantly studied, performed, and reinterpreted in diverse cultural and political contexts throughout the world. Even today, we are studying Shakespeare. People are studying Shakespeare, students are studying Shakespeare, and they are reinterpreted and rediscovered in different contexts of the world. And when we talk about the major works written by Shakespeare, then we would like to have a look upon it. With the exception of Romeo and Juliet, William Shakespeare's first plays were mostly histories written in early 1590s. As we were talking in our initial slides that the works written by Shakespeare at the initial stage were, you see, histories. For example, Richard II, Henry VI, part 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and Henry V dramatized the destructive results of weak or corrupt rulers and have been interpreted by drama historians as Shakespeare's way of justifying the origins of the Tudor dynasty. So you see, in the beginning, actually, he tried to write the histories and comedies. And then Shakespeare also wrote several comedies during his early period. In the beginning, as we were talking earlier, that he wrote comedies fully or the full tragedies. There was no mixture. But in the later phase of his life, he started making the fine amalgamation of tragedy and comedy, and it was called tragicomedy. So Shakespeare also wrote several comedies during his early period. The Bitty Romance, A Midsummer Night's Drama. We are going to study Midsummer Night's Drama, and it is in your syllabus, my dear friends. The Romantic Merchant of Venice, the wit and word play of Much Ado About Nothing, The Charming As You Like It, and Twelfth Night. Other plays possibly written before 16th century includes Titus Andronicus and the Comedy of Errors, The Taming of the Shrew, and The Two Gentlemen of Verona. So these were some famous names written by William Shakespeare at the initial stage. And then actually in his later works, he started writing tragedies, and then tragicomedies came into the final stage of his writing career. It was in William Shakespeare's later period, after 16th century, that he wrote the tragedies Hamlet, King Lear, Othello, and Macbeth. So, as we were talking, my dear friends, in the later phase of his life, after 16th century, you see he started writing some important tragedies. He started writing some important tragedies, and there he wrote like Hamlet, King Lear, Othello, and Macbeth. And in these, Shakespeare's characters present vivid impressions of human temperament that are timeless and universal. Possibly, the best known of these plays is Hamlet, which explores betrayal, retribution, incest, and moral failure. These moral failures often drive the twists and turns of Shakespeare's plots, destroying the hero and those he loves. So, as we were talking, that you see, out of his tragedies that are known today, Hamlet is very much famous, that explores, you see, the theme of betrayal, retribution, incest, and moral failure. In William Shakespeare's final period, as we were talking, he wrote several tragicomedies. Among these are Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale, and The Tempest. Though graver in tone than the comedies, they are not the dark tragedies of King Lear or Macbeth, because they end with reconciliation and forgiveness. So in the later phase of his life, he tried to write the tragicomedies, and there he expresses his the design of his mind and philosophy. Now here comes Midsummer Night's Dream, my dear friends. And this is the drama. This is a kind of comedy, my dear friends, and it is included in our syllabus. So we would like to understand its plot and its story and what exactly it is. So here we go. A Midsummer Night's Dream is a comedy play by William Shakespeare, believed to have been written between 1590 and 1596. It portrays the events surrounding the marriage of the Duke of Athens, Theseus, and Hippolyta. These include the adventures of 4 young Athenian lovers and a group of 6 mechanical actors who are controlled and manipulated by the fairies who inhabited the forest in which most of the play is set. The play is one of Shakespeare's most popular works for the stage and is widely performed across the world. So, as we were talking, my dear friends, that it has got the adventures of 4 young Athenian lovers. It has got, this is a very important point that it has got the adventures of 4 young Athenian lovers and a group of 6 mechanical actors who are controlled and manipulated by the fairies who inhabit the forest in which most of the play is set. The play is one of Shakespeare's most popular works for the stage and is widely performed everywhere in the world. Important characters. So before we start studying and before we start interrogating and trying to know the main plot of Midsummer Night's Dream, and you see, we need to understand who are the main important characters and what they are and how they move actually. So there are actually Athenians. The Athenians, so Theseus, Duke of Athens. Theseus is a Duke of Athens who is there in the drama. Hippolyta, she is a queen of Amazons, betrothed to Theseus. She is betrothed to Theseus and she is a queen of the Amazons. And Philostrate, he is a master of rebels. Aegus, father of Hermia, wants her to marry Demetrius. So Aegus is a father of Hermia and he wants her to marry with Demetrius. And Nader, father of Helena, Hermia, daughter of Aegus. She is also daughter of Aegus, in love with Lysander. And she is, in love with Lysander, Helena, and she is in love with Demetrius. Lysander in love with Hermia at first, but later loves Helena and then goes back to love Hermia. So Lysander actually in love with Hermia at first, but later loves Helena and then goes back to love Hermia. Demetrius in love with Hermia at first, but later loves Helena. And Spirit 1-2 talk to Puck and Oberon. And then there are fairies. Oberon is Titania's husband and king of the fairies, a very important character. The very important character of Midsummer Night's Dream. Oberon is the husband of Titania and he is the king of fairies also. Titania is Oberon's wife and queen of the fairies. And she is the queen of the fairies also at the same time. Robin Goodfellow, Puck, servant to Oberon. Puck is a very important character once again. Puck is the one who does something actually, and because of his movements and all, something happens in the drama that we will try to understand later on. So Puck is the servant to Oberon, and then Peace Blossom, this is the fairy servant to Titania. Then Cobweb, fairy servant to Titania. Then Moth, fairy servant to Titania. Then Mustard Seed, also fairy servant to Titania. First fairy, second fairy, and this is how the story goes. So these are the characters actually, my dear friends, and we need to remember some of the characters actually, because some of them may be asked in the examination also. And now here we are for the plot. The play features 5 interconnecting plots, connected by a celebration of the wedding of Duke Theseus of Athens and the amazing queen Hippolyta. So it starts with the wedding of the Duke of Theseus of Athens and the amazing queen Hippolyta, which is set simultaneously in the woodland and in the realm of fairyland under the light of the moon. So it takes place in the woodland under the light of the moon. The play opens with Hermia, and this play actually opens with Hermia, who is in love with Lysander, and she is in love with Lysander, refusing to submit to her father Aegeus' demand that she wed Demetrius, to whom he has arranged for her to be married. Helena, meanwhile, pines unrequitedly for Demetrius. Enraged, Aegeus invokes an ancient Athenian law, because Aegeus was not, happy with Helena. That is why, Aegeus invokes an ancient Athenian law before Duke Theseus, whereby a daughter must marry the suitor chosen by her father, because it was according to the law and the regulation that the daughter must marry with the suitor who was chosen by her father or face death. Theseus offers her another choice, lifelong chastity, while worshipping the goddess Diana as a nun. Theseus offered another choice also, and he told that he had to be, nun. She had to be nun for the lifetime. Then Peter Quince and his fellow players planned to put on a play for the wedding of the Duke and the Queen, the most lamentable comedy and the most cruel death of Pyramus and Thisbe. Quince reads the names of characters and bestows them to the players. Nick Bottom, who is playing the main role of Pyramus, is over enthusiastic and wants to dominate others by suggesting himself by the characters of Thisbe, the Loin, and Pyramus at the same time. He would also rather be tyrant and recites some lines of Achilles. Quince ends the meeting with "At the Duke's Oak be meet." So actually, this is how the play goes. And later on, in the parallel plot line, Oberon. Who is the Oberon? We have discussed in the characterization. He is the king of fairies, and Titania was the queen of fairies, and his wife also. So in the parallel plot, Oberon and Titania have come to the forest outside Athens. They have come outside Athens in the forest. Titania tells Oberon that she plans to stay there until she has attended Theseus and Hippolyta's wedding. So Titania tells Oberon that she would like to be here because she had to attend the marriage of Theseus and Hippolyta. Oberon and Titania are estranged because Titania refuses to give her Indian changeling to Oberon for use as his knight or henchman, since the child's mother was one of Titania's worshippers. Oberon seeks to punish Titania's disobedience because there was clash between Titania and Oberon, and Titania refused to give the desired things to Oberon, and that is why Oberon decided that she should be punished. Oberon decided that she should be punished actually, and when he decided, he calls upon Robin Puck, his shrewd and knavish sprite. He was his shrewd and knavish sprite to help him concoct a magical juice derived from a flower called love in idleness. So he asked Puck to derive a particular musical juice that is known as love in idleness, which turns from white to purple when struck by Cupid's arrow. When the concoction is applied to the eyelids of a sleeping person, that person upon waking falls in love with the first living thing they perceive. So the impact, that particular impact of that juice herb was like that. If it is applied on the eyelids of a sleeping person, that person upon waking actually falls in love with the first thing that he or she has observed. He instructs Puck to retrieve the flower with the hope that he might make Titania fall in love with an animal of the forest and thereby shame her into giving up the little Indian boy. So Oberon instructed Puck to apply it on the eyes of Titania so that she would be in love with an animal and will feel shameful for her act. So this was the, plan that was decided by Oberon and Puck. Hermia and Lysander have escaped to the same forest in hopes of eloping. Helena, desperate to reclaim Demetrius' love, tells Demetrius about the plan, and he follows them in hopes of killing Lysander. Helena continually advances towards Demetrius, promising to love him more than Hermia. However, he rebuffs her with cruel insults against her. Observing this, Oberon orders Puck to spread some of the magical juice from the flower on the eyelids of the young Athenian men. Instead, Puck mistakes Lysander for Demetrius, not having actually seen either before, and administers the juice to the sleeping Lysander. So he applies the juice on the eyes of Lysander. Helena, coming across, wakes him while attempting to determine whether he is dead or asleep. Upon this happening, Lysander immediately falls in love with Helena because that was the impact of the juice. So Lysander immediately falls in love with Helena, and Oberon sees Demetrius is still following Hermia. And you see, Demetrius was following Hermia and is enraged. When Demetrius decides to go to sleep, Oberon sends Puck to get Helena while he charms Demetrius' eyes. Upon waking up, he sees Helena. Now both men are in pursuit of Helena. However, she is convinced that her two suitors are mocking her, as neither loved her originally. Hermia is at a loss to see why her lover has abandoned her, and accuses Helena of stealing Lysander away from her. The four quarrel with each other until Lysander and Demetrius become so enraged that they seek a place to duel each other to prove whose love for Helena is the greatest. So finally, because they became very angry and they decided, okay, we will finalize these things after a duel, Oberon orders Puck to keep Lysander and Demetrius from catching up with one another and to remove the charm from Lysander. Lysander returns to loving Hermia while Demetrius continues to love Helena. Meanwhile, Quince and his band of 6 laborers have arranged to perform their play about Pyramus and Thisbe for Theseus' wedding and venture into the forest near Titania's bower for their rehearsal. Bottom is spotted by Puck, who, taking his name to be another bird for a jackass, transforms his head into that of a donkey. When Bottom returns for his next lines, the other workmen run screaming in terror, much to Bottom's confusion. Since he hasn't felt a thing during the transformation, determined to wait for his friends, he begins to sing to himself. Titania is awakened by Bottom's singing and immediately falls in love with him. Titania is awakened by Bottom's singing and immediately falls in love with him. She lavishes him with attention and presumably makes love to him while she is in this state of devotion. Oberon takes the changeling. Having achieved his goals, Oberon releases Titania, orders Puck to remove the donkey's head from Bottom, and arranges everything so that Hermia, Lysander, Demetrius, and Helena will believe that they have been dreaming when they awaken. The fairies then disappear, and Theseus and Hippolyta arrive on the scene. During an early morning hunt, they bake the lovers, and since Demetrius does not love Hermia anymore, Theseus overrules Aegeus' demands and arranges a group wedding. The lovers decide that the night's events must have been a dream. After they all exit, Bottom awakes, and he too decides that he must have experienced a dream, past the bit of man. Afterwards, Oberon, Titania, Puck, and other fairies enter and bless the house and its occupants with good fortune. After all other characters leave, Puck restores amends and suggests to the audience that what they just experienced might be nothing but a dream. And that is how this is the name of the play. So, my dear friends, actually, Shakespeare was a well-known and very great dramatist of English literature, and Midsummer Night's Drama is a very fine piece of work written by the pen of Shakespeare. It is a very good piece of work, and that is very popular even today, that talks about the comical incidences and the comical theme that has been narrated in the play. Thank you all of you very much.